Hello and welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today is Wednesday, August 21st, 2024. So this morning, I did not, as I often do, I did not engage in social media or checking emails or anything like that. I do have some autonomous programs that will sometimes, well, not sometimes, they'll always alert me if there's Stronghold specific news. And I did not specifically have that enabled. And I haven't for the past week or so, mainly because I've been kind of taking a little bit of a break from just being so engaged with, be it news or notifications or, anything else. But I did take a look at the dashboard, which is something I often do. And this was prior to the market opening. And I saw that under number of shares traded, which will show up in pre-market trading, right? If it's before 9:30, I saw it was like 11 million shares. And I thought, okay, either one of two things is happening. Either there's a malfunction with the dashboard and it's displaying erroneous information, or alternatively, something really big and something really momentous has been announced. And of course, because I have elected, of all days, right, to not be as connected, right, I don't know what's going on. So I took a quick look at our investor relations sections, right, on the company's website. And I saw the headline, right? Bitfarms to acquire Stronghold Digital Mining. And without even seeing any of the details, I felt immediately a very, very strange set of feelings, right? Like a tinge of sadness at some level, joy, uncertainty, all of these things sort of swirling around, right? Because, hey, look, I have been a proponent of the mission and purpose of this business for a very, very long time. And so anything that were to materialize that could help propel the mission and purpose of this business into the future is something that I would very much welcome, right? So I clicked through to look at some of the details and, I'm still digesting a lot of this. Now, I have not, as of yet, ventured into social media. I haven't really been on X at all, actually. I have not looked at any updated comments on YouTube. I am going to engage in something that cognitive behavioral therapists would call mind reading, right? Where I'm going to pretend I'm sort of like, I know what others are thinking, right? Even though I may not have the evidence to necessarily know what they're thinking. And I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that there are going to be a portion of Stronghold Digital Mining shareholders who may be concerned with the valuation of this proposed acquisition. I have some thoughts on that, which I think are still kind of developing as I bring myself up to speed with all of the details of the proposed deal. I will say that if this were a situation where it's like, hey, we're going to assume this debt, we'll pay off the debt, here's $125 million, just like in cash, that's it. I think I could perhaps really understand why one might feel a little bit shortchanged in that type of transaction, right? Where it's like, hey, wait, I'm just kind of getting a lump sum. There's there's no potential upside in the future. And the lump sum that I'm getting, yeah, it represents a premium to where we've been trading. But I know instinctively that there are many within the shareholder base who might say, hey, but we feel like even that number is kind of not perhaps really, sort of like in keeping with what we think our true valuation is. Okay. Now, on the other hand, and the other hand is in fact what this deal represents. This is a deal whereby Stronghold Digital Mining shareholders get, I believe, 2.52 Bitfarms shares for every 1 share of Stronghold Digital Mining that a shareholder may have. So what that really means is that there's an immediate surge in the stock price, which we saw today. But now, right, the Stronghold Digital Mining shareholder base is arguably very much aligned with trying to figure out, hey, what's going on with Bitfarms? What's the status of their stock price? Has it been trading at a premium lately? Or, as I discovered as a result of doing some homework, gosh, it's been trading at what I think even the most sober-minded analysts out there would conclude is a bit of a steep discount to what it has the potential to be trading at. And what that means for Stronghold Digital Mining shareholders, at least from my perspective, is that, hey, if you accept those, 2.52, I believe, Bitfarms shares for every 1 share you have, right, there's this upside that remains to be lived into, right? A lot of this hinges on what you think about Bitcoin. And by Bitcoin, I mean BTC. And what you believe to be the future of BTC. To the extent you believe, hey, you know what, we had the halving in April of this year. If the past is any predictor of the future, which we're oftentimes warned, right, not to look to the past as a predictor of the future, but to the extent you want to be somewhat constructive and say, hey, what has Bitcoin done in the past after a halving? Generally speaking, right, you got to give it enough time, right, Bitcoin goes up, and it goes up by quite a bit. In that type of scenario, a company like Bitfarms, just from the very superficial amount of research I've done, up till this point, I think Bitfarms does extremely well, right? As arguably probably most Bitcoin mining companies that are still around to enjoy that surge in hopefully hash prices, right? As well as enthusiasm and excitement that kind of returns to the Bitcoin, ecosystem. Bitfarms, I think, does have the potential to really, I think, ride that wave. Now, something I did choose to do, and this did involve a little bit of social media, specifically YouTube. I watched a number of different interviews with Ben Gagnon, and I hope I'm pronouncing Ben's name correctly. And I came away from watching those interviews really very, very impressed, not just with Ben's personal journey, right? Both insofar as his introduction to Bitcoin, which, in a very small way I can relate to, but also just his journey within Bitfarms itself is quite remarkable. And I think there's something to be said for somebody who articulates over and over again that they have a very clear vision of what they want to accomplish, right? Now that they are in the position to really effectuate a lot of change at a company like Bitfarms. And by change, I don't necessarily mean radical change. I mean really more like evolving into and growing into, right, this company's future, right, growing into its own full potential as, right, a Bitcoin mining company, which may very well also have now some interest in high-performance computing, AI, and things like that. But just listening to Ben articulate a little bit of his story, and just understanding that he was the chief, I believe, right, mining officer at Bitfarms, that requires a very arguably strong technical set of credentials in terms of like really understanding the Bitcoin mining ecosystem, right? Understanding Bitcoin mining machines, understanding power costs, understanding a lot of things, which arguably a CEO who's maybe more of a, perhaps maybe somebody who's more marketing oriented, maybe somebody who's more finance driven, maybe somebody who's more, let's say like less technical, right? They don't maybe understand any of that stuff. Hey, we get the right people to run those departments. And if those departments run well, the entire enterprise runs well. I think there's something to be said for that style of CEO. But hearing Ben's story and realizing, hey, this is a guy who has tremendous hands-on experience, who's been in the trenches, right? Who really understands this industry. I have to tell you, I was very, very impressed, to say the least. And I am not one to base decisions off of a couple of YouTube interviews, right? But my preliminary impression is that Bitfarms is in very, very capable hands with Ben in the top spot, so to speak, running the show. And by extension, I think a very compelling argument could be made that Stronghold Digital Mining will be in very good hands, right? If this transaction were to be ultimately consummated in Q1 2025, I'm inclined to believe that Stronghold, will arguably have its best days ahead of it, or at least the assets of what was at that point Stronghold Digital Mining will quite arguably have their best days ahead of them. I elected, for a variety of reasons, to take some chips off the table today. This has been the type of trade that evolved into something much more than just a trade, right? As you know, if you've been watching these broadcasts for any length of time, I think it makes sense to say, hey, you know what? It's useful to balance things out a bit, right? This was a very, very concentrated position for me, at least. Not my only one, but I'm just saying. And concentrated, to be clear, not even so much financially, but just in terms of like personal investment, right? Where here I am, like really rooting for this company. I really want to see the mine waste, which has affected so many people here in my home state of Pennsylvania. I want to see that stuff remediated. I want to see it removed. I want to see it cleaned up, That's a really, really big deal to me. That is a huge deal to me. I strongly believe that mine waste is a carcinogen, and I strongly believe that it's something that affects the health of people who live, especially, in these communities where it's like right there. But it affects really anyone, arguably, who is exposed to this stuff. I'm not a big fan of mine waste at all. And so I am incredibly passionate about the specific topic of mine waste cleanup, right? As I've shared before, I am about maybe 4 miles away from one of these purpose-built facilities, right? Which could have potentially been acquired by Stronghold Digital Mining not long after its IPO if the Bitcoin, mining, ecosystem hadn't kind of shifted into a bit of a crypto winter right away. Remember, we had to go from hyper growth mode to like survival mode. So I really want to see this stuff cleaned up. It really sounds as if though under Bitfarms' stewardship and leadership, these two purpose-built facilities will continue to operate, which I think is a really, really good thing. This has been a hell of a journey. And as I said, I'm still very mixed emotion about a lot of this. I really am. But I do know that ultimately you have to deal with the cards you're dealt. Okay. I'll be diving into, social media comments. I don't know what I'm going to be like walking into, but I wanted to kind of just share my thoughts without having necessarily been exposed to anybody else's thoughts, right? These are truly just my thoughts as I conceive them. And look, as I said, it wouldn't surprise me if there are those that are quite concerned about the valuation. And again, as I said, hey, I think if this were a cash deal where it's like, hey, here's 125 million in cash, have a nice day. Okay, that's one thing, but it's more like, hey, we want to give you a part of us. We want you to be part of us too, right? So it's kind of like, we're being absorbed into this not a new entity, right? But it's like, hey, we're being absorbed into Bitfarms, potentially. And so all of a sudden, we all want Bitfarms to do well, right? Because we're going to ostensibly be Bitfarm shareholders. So, okay, my friend, I still have to let this sink in and sort of process a lot of the details. It's a big day for us, though, in many ways. It really is. It's bittersweet. That's all I can say. Okay, until we meet again, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we will definitely meet again in the not too distant future.